Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We've got Professor Patience Akpan-Obong of Arizona State University in the USA. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
We've been taking a look at the performance of the government so far. I do remember before, while the election was going on, you were also one of our guest analysts at the time. You saw the build-up, the expectation, and now you're back. What impression do you have after all said and done?
Well, when I think of the last 2 years and the momentum of 2 years before, well, 2 years ago, the build-up to the elections, I keep thinking of this country's song titled, "Did I Shave My Legs for This?" So essentially, it's about somebody getting all ready, walked up to go on a date, and it didn't go the way she thought it would go. So I sort of think that there was this romance between Nigerians and President Buhari, and I don't know if they will be singing that song, "Did I Shave My Legs for This?" But in some ways, I think there's a little bit of a letdown, and I'm not saying that the government hasn't done anything, depending on what you're looking at. But generally, as somebody coming in, I come in regularly, and I see what's going on, and I just feel that there's that kind of maybe plateau. And that happens in relationships. Sorry if I'm using relationships metaphors this morning, but I don't think Nigerians generally got what they thought they wanted or what they thought they were going to get when they were thinking about change. And again, I'm not saying that nothing has happened, but what needed to happen right away was something that touched Nigerians at a very visceral level. So, for instance, the roads, electricity, and I don't know, again, I don't have the numbers to compare, but from what I see, I think the electricity situation has gotten worse. I know the numbers may be better, but when you live in a place where I stay in Lagos, where the generator is constantly on, and I remember there was a time I visited, and for about 2 days, there was light, public light, not generator light, and all of that. And then the roads. In some places, the roads are worse than they were, but also know that in some places, there have been improvement. One example is the Calabar-Itu road. I remember spending 8 hours on that road. That's like a 45, it used to be a 45-minute road. I spent 8 hours there some 2 years ago, and I told myself I'll never be on that road. But now I'm told that they're fixing the road, so there's improvement there. But what needed to happen right away would have been, okay, so I think the government made 2 missteps, not mistakes, missteps. First, it took longer to appoint ministers. And that kind of the credit, the political goodwill the government, the incoming government got, kind of, petered away during that period of anticipation and waiting for the cabinet to be set up. And when you don't have a cabinet running, right, you just hit the ground running, that affects a whole lot of things. Not necessarily practical things. It could just be perception issues. Because sometimes in politics, it's all about perception. It's not so much what you're doing, but what people think you are doing or not doing.
Part of the narrative, what they said at that time when they came in, I think they still say it, that they're in a very bad situation. They had to recalibrate and ensure that things pick up. No. Does that fly for you? No, that doesn't fly for me. And I don't think it flies for a lot of Nigerians because, number one, there was a campaign, and I know you can't really know what's inside until you get there, but you have an idea. At that level, if you're running for the presidency of a country, you are at a level where you have a lot of information about what's going on. So you don't need to get inside before you know what's going inside. You have intelligence reports formally and informally, and then that's one. Then secondly, you win the election, you have 2 months before inauguration, and during that transitional period, you're supposed to get a lot of information, at least have a clear, well, maybe not a clear idea of what's going on, but have a good idea of what's going on. So when you come in on it from day one, you should have a clear idea, you should have
a strategy on how to deal with some of the problems, at least the initial problems, until you get into, get in and then find that the problems are more. But what I'm saying, again, I don't live here, even though I come so often that it seems I live here. But the thing is that from my perception as somebody who comes in and out and all of that, I think there were things they could have done, the government, the administration could have done, even before seeing the complexity of the problems. And how you have 2 months to set up your cabinet to start with. Again, I can't speak for the president, so probably he had other reasons for not setting up his cabinet right away. And then after the cabinet was set up, there were, again, the narrative you're talking about. Yeah. I also think, there's a problem with messaging. And
at what stage? Designing the messaging or relaying to the people? Relaying
to the people. For me, maybe my background as a journalist back in my former life, again, it's not about what you're doing, but about what people think you're doing. If I had been part of the decision-making right from the beginning, I would make the president more visible to Nigerians. There's something about, people relating to you, even if you're not doing anything right, it's like, oh yeah, well, he speaks well, or yeah, he's a nice guy. Because when you relate, when people feel connected to you, when people feel, okay, you're just like them, or you have the same concerns as they have, or you understand their concerns, then it's really easy for them to go through the problems with you. But when we have a leader who kind of, he's not that visible, so that was at the initial stage. I'm not even talking about now. That's a different story entirely. They needed to make him visible to Nigerians. It would not have been unusual for him to have a weekly chat. President Obama, when he had this online weekly chat, a weekly show that people had access to if you wanted to. So it would not have been unusual. It would not have been too much to say, okay, every 2 weeks, for instance, have a national broadcast on radio, whatever. Let people hear you. Be visible. Go to public places. Again, you build up the goodwill. So even as you're doing things behind doors, let people see you outside. Even if the road, again, the Calabar-Itu road, even if the road is not fixed, when you see the road is really bad, but you're thinking, okay, last week I saw the president on TV was talking, he understands what's going on, he's going to fix it. So even if it takes 4 years to fix it, people understand. Mm-hmm. Again, I can, talking of the roads, because there's this list of roads, kilometers of roads that have been done in the last 2 years. And so I don't know but I wouldn't say it's not true. Okay, so now we are hearing that this number of kilometers of roads have been fixed around the country. But again, it's not about photo opportunities. It's not about everything has to be on camera. But people have to know what is going on. And so people can understand when things are not going well.
Oh, well. Now, what you've tried to provide is a balanced narrative. Because, for some people, they say that that's what's been difficult to find over this midterm report. If you ask those in government, most of them will say, we've done very well. If you ask those in the opposition, they'll say, no, there's been no progress whatsoever. And for a lot of people, they say that, what they've been trying to search for is a balanced narrative. What precisely, has been going on. Now, you have talked about messaging as part of what could have been the challenge. But as Nigerians, would you say that we also understood, very intently the enormity of the problems that are confronting us?
But see, Nigerians are told about the problems, okay, from a certain perspective. But there are also the problems that Nigerians are already familiar with. For instance, electricity, poor roads, or even, hospitals. And the fact that the president of this country has to go to another country to get health care. So what happens to the average Nigerian? The women who are still dying in childbirth in hospitals and so-called private clinics.
So let's take healthcare, for instance.
Yes.
I think we've heard the Minister of Health talk about how his focus right now is on primary health care.
Okay.
That one area of health care in this country has, is non-existent almost, and that even though, yes, it's not underneath directly the federal government's purview, he believes that that is where we need to focus on to ensure that people are able to get basic care first before they go to either the secondary or tertiary institutions. Now, when he puts the solutions in that manner, do we understand that if, for instance, you go to a tertiary health institution and things are not working as they should, do we understand what really is involved in ensuring that we have the kind of tertiary institutions that we desire?
Okay. Do Nigerians understand? Nigerians know, at least the average Nigerian knows that when he or she is sick, will need a whole lot of money to go to a hospital. And some of the hospitals are not well equipped. And sometimes the providers maybe not fully trained, or they are working with equipment that, so they don't have the resources. So they understand what it means to be sick and what it means to go to a hospital and not be attended to until you bring a whole lot of money. So Nigerians understand that. But back to the other question about whether Nigerians understand the problems. So we talk about corruption. It's like, oh, the previous government was so corrupt. Oh, we have to clean up the stable first. We have to do this. So Nigerians went, okay, go on, clean, do what you need to do. But I am sick here. My children can't go to school because the schools don't have the facilities. And the schools that have facilities, I can't afford. So it's like, I'm waiting. Do what you need to do, but I have my own problems too. So the government understands the problems of this country from a different perspective. For the average Nigerian, it's still the bread and butter issue. It's like, do I have access to this? And you look at the schools. There's the school that I attended for my secondary school. 2, 3, 5 years ago when I went back there, it was so awful. But over the years, with all kinds of efforts, we've been able to kind of put it together because it's a public school. We want it to be the kind of school that has at least the facilities that will help these children from homes, whose parents may not afford the expensive private schools to go there. So at the end of the day, Nigerians have their own problems. So the government, Nigerians as in the average person. So the leadership has to find a way of harmonizing their own problems with the problems of Nigerians. Come to a middle point.
By that, I was asking, do you think we have an idea of how long it might take to solve some of these problems? So, for instance, electricity, which you talked about, you say that, in the part of Lagos where you live, it doesn't look like it is improved in that area. You say even though the numbers